ladies and gentlemen, sure, there's a climate emergency that wasn't declared by the president, but yet he's trying to further win power for the United States and get us off of foreign oil so that the amount of oil and coal that we produce can be used for smelting plants and factories instead of for commuter cars. I know it's insane. And sure, there are variants in COVID that are still floating around. And even though the United States, we're largely vaccinated against it, and our vaccines actually function, and therefore people who've been vaccinated are getting through these things. But we still got a significant number of maggots in that crowd who want to show their loyalty to Trump by not getting vaccinated, even though he is. Sure, that's true. But do you know what the real emergency right now? Do you have any idea the threat that we are facing? Do you have any idea? Right. I'm terrified. George Soros is trying to buy up Spanish radio stations. And I know what you're thinking. Wait, isn't that Bain Capital's plan to control the Latino voting bloc by the conservatives buying up these stations? Yes, it is. Unfortunately, yeah, George Soros is trying to buy up Spanish radio stations. I mean, you want to talk about an emergency? President Dinesh D'Souza would declare this today. All right, hold on 1 second. Let's start at the top of this because the graphics roll in. Also, I used to think this was a room in the house. We now know it's a studio in their garage or some part of their house where they shoot these kind of things. And they spent a lot of time trying to make this look like some sort of home thing. That's it, by the way. And I also used to think that there was a wall full of his posters behind them and that these were curtains that they pulled in front of them sometimes. The curtains are actually behind. This is a television set on a stand with an image of his posters back there. They didn't even bother to print them out. And just prepare yourself. I'm going to go, by the way, with this glass of water is half full because it's the kind of guy I am. Dinesh is waiting on a call. Luckily, Debbie is already there, so she doesn't have to miss her cue, or actually show up too early for her cue. But watch for a lot of paper squaring during this. But George Soros, Super Jew, is trying to buy up Spanish radio stations. America be warned.
Desperate to retain their control over Hispanics. In fact,
that's right. The Democrats have the Hispanics by the cojones.
Desperate to.
They're very desperate. They're apparently. So I get it. They're being desperate.
Help Hispanics to go the way of the blacks.
Don't look at us, Debbie. He's the one who fucking said it. Holy shit. Desperate to get Hispanics to go the way of the blacks. Fucking hell. Jesus Christ. What was that again? Hold on.
In fact, desperate to help Hispanics to go the way of the blacks. The Democrats are pulling out all the stops.
Well, I mean, obviously, if there's any stops in the way... Again, Debbie, pay attention. You knew what he was going to say. Look at the notes. He's squaring his paper. You're trying to remain completely still. Maybe if I just sit here like I'm a third grader getting a picture on a fence with an apple and a book, no one will notice me.
Here's a news report. Fox News.
Okay, at least you know it's from someplace credible. Weren't you just attacking Fox News? Never mind.
Soros is making a takeover bid for a conservative set of radio stations.
Oh, I thought he was just buying the music stations and converting them. I see. So, Fox News, Soros, conservative radio, something like that. Soros takeover. Another Spanish star votes for the conservative Latino radio slams Soros-funded liberal. Soros takeover conservative radio star. The Fox News. George Soros, Joe Biden put Hispanic conservatives at center. Conservative Latino. Fox News. Soros takeover. I think this is what they're... hold on. Another Spanish radio star bolts before liberal group takes over conservative
Wealth is breaking
station.
ground on your biggest project yet.
Shut up. Soros-backed group's takeover of Miami's conservative radio Mambi is about power, Jorge Bonilla says. First on Fox, Danya Andrino is the latest conservative radio Mambi star to walk away from the Miami-based Spanish-language station ahead of the planned takeover by a George Soros-linked liberal group. Dear God, open a new tab. Let's see it. This is big. Okay. Where is this business? What is that? George Soros contributes $1 billion to Beto O'Rourke. Okay, this is just a list of Soros-related shit. Okay. Alejandrino will join fellow now former Radio Mamba host Lourdes Ubieta at Americano Media, which, by the way, it's just like American media, except it's instead of making a pot of coffee, they took 2 espresso shots and add water. A recently launched conservative news organization that has been aggressively pursuing Radio Mambi personalities who refuse to work for the Soros-backed group. You mean the people that are going to get fired, I suppose, because if in theory Soros is turning the place liberal and therefore they won't have a job, so they're leaving earlier?
Spanish radio stations.
Oh dear God!
Radio stations. Yeah. It's called Radio Mambi, and evidently there were conservative hosts and so on in these stations.
On a conservative station? What the fuck? Oh, 666 likes. Hey, thanks. Now's a good time to do a 666 super chat if you want. I haven't been asking for stuff all along, by the way, and I apologize on that. Natalie, oh my gosh, good to see you. So excited for the show tomorrow night at Vamped. It's been too long. I agree. Yes, tomorrow night, Nerd Halen will be there. I'm also going to be on the local news tomorrow promoting the show. I'm very excited. What's here? Craig, thank you so much. Kathy, thank you so much. Keep trying to keep us sane. I am. Hogwash Reserve 2016. It's a bottle worth having. I might have to buy a thing of like sparkling white wine and just put hogwash on it just for a future Judge Janine sketch.
But Soros's idea is he doesn't want Hispanics
to hear the truth, you mean?
No. And they don't know how to use the internet. So how will they ever be able to hear other things? Obviously there are tons of liberal Hispanic stations in Florida. So now it will be 100% takeover of the Spanish-speaking airwaves by liberals who currently own, checks notes, 0 radio stations in Florida.
He doesn't want them to hear the other side. Let's not even necessarily call it the truth. And so what's happening is that...
Well, you can't call it the truth. You're talking about conservative talk.
Some of the prominent...
I love that.
The other side. Let's not Hispanics
to hear the truth, you mean?
He doesn't want them to hear the other side. Let's not even necessarily call it the truth.
Right. I wouldn't necessarily call conservative Spanish radio truth. I'm sorry. Is it loud? I apologize. Why? I brought it down. All right. There we go.
And so what's happening is that some of the prominent hosts, here's Dania Alexandrino. She goes, listen, I'm not staying with Radio Mambi
if they're going to fire me.
Taken over by George Soros. The conservative stars of this Hispanic radio network are
who aren't going to work there anymore because it's being arguably taken over and turned into a liberal talk station. Boo fuckity who. Stephanie Miller used to be on the air in Los Angeles. She's not anymore because Bain Capital bought out the station she was on and turned it into conservative talk, even though they lose money on it. The publicly traded company, and they intentionally lose money because they consider it a PR expenditure.
Look for the exits, and I hope look for alternative media creations where we can keep alive a conservative presence, because it's one thing for Hispanics to be sort of moving toward the Republican Party, but you need that diet of information.
Yeah, they're not, if you turn off that spigot for even a second, they'll wake up. If the hypnotism stops.
Knowledge.
Sorry, I thought I brought it down. I apologize. Here you go.
To partly deconstruct what's being put out by Telemundo and Univision.
Telemundo and Univision are mouthpieces. They're basically the Spanish version of CNN and MSNBC.
Dear God.
I mean, let's face it.
Actually, I didn't see this. Alexander.
Yeah, and yet right-wingers have taken over the radio and therefore it's understood that, you know, you're not, look, the rule is you get them at home and we'll keep it off the cable boxes through manipulation, like Univision and those kind of things. We'll make it like only on part of the day, or keep it out of hotels or that kind of shit, so that when they're traveling, they'll only get to see, you know, the translated version of, you know, of Fox or what have you. And then, but you stay out of their cars. People are driving. If they're listening to talk radio, that's when the right wing has them, and it's a turf. They've established that as their turf, and they're not going to let it go.
And Rena, this is the radio host. She's going to be joining another host named Lourdes Ubieta, and this is at Americano Media, so a recently launched conservative news organization.
Yes, I just read that, Dinesh. You know what the difference between you and I is, Dinesh? I mean, there's lots of them. But I was able to, without the use of any kind of a team, take the article you're reading and put it on the fucking screen, so that when I'm reading it, people know that I'm actually reading what's there, as opposed to, what the fuck is this? I mean, they look like they're trying to pick off of like, we only need one menu. We always get the same thing.
That is basically gobbling up these radio personalities. So this is really good.
There's that one, of course. There's El American, which has been trying to get the Hispanic, conservative Hispanic audience. And so I hope that there's way more that are going to pop up, because
they're going to have to, because they had the radio stations, and now they're, for the first time, losing the radio stations, and therefore they're going to have to start their own organizations. Yes, I understand how capitalism works.
For every conservative station that Soros takes over, I hope 10 more conservative stations are born out of that.
Yeah, that's what'll happen. Each member of the, each individual person on the radio station will start their own podcast. You're welcome.
Well, I mean, you see how Soros, this is a guy who has, it's almost like he's
Jewish.
You know, he's kind of gone all in with the devil. And by that I mean is he's taking...
Well, I mean, that's how the Jews work, right, Dinesh?
Taking his billions.
Absolutely, and I've told you before, it's not just in America. This man is trying to make the entire world communist.
Oh, okay. All right. Straight. So we're not talking about liberal takeover then.
And he has taken all of South America, at least most of it, all of the communist takeover in South America, partly responsible for Soros in South America.
You mean Soros is partially responsible for the communist takeovers in South America?
So this man is not
just... You mean the dude who made all of his money in currency manipulation is a communist?
Just looking at America. Of course, America's the big prize for him, but he has decimated South America.
I mean, we know that he tried this in Hungary. In fact, the Soros organization...
He's from Hungary.
...has been expelled from Hungary, and I think is prohibited from activities in Hungary because...
Which sounds, it's very liberal. You know, that's what you want.
They were trying...
freedom. They did it for freedom. They expelled his organization for freedom.
Trying to subvert the government over there. He's had mischief in Eastern Europe.
Yep.
Spain?
Yes.
In Asia. Yes. Currency manipulation. So
that's how he made his money, dummy. Again, not precisely communist-like behavior.
This is a very bad guy.
He's dangerous.
But...
Very dangerous. He's also a G.
From a distance, I admire the fact that here's a guy who is committed to his
and is actually a billionaire, unlike Trump.
Worldview, who funds innumerable organizations.
Yeah. There's a little bit of jealousy here. There's a little bit of like, remember he was bitching about the people who funded his last movie, 2000 something or other. And he's upset that they actually wanted a return. Apparently Soros doesn't even want a return on his stuff.
Almost like a venture capitalist of leftist activism.
Yeah. So nothing is more communist than venture capitalism.
And we need more of this on our side. Because
yes, we need our own George Soros. What the fuck?
Because and
the sad...
Because, Trump's a fake billionaire. And, I mean, we've got the Koch brothers and almost all of, like, major oil and gas companies. And don't forget gun manufacturers, but still.
Thing, honey, is that we do have people, maybe not of his, in his
Sure. I mean, the Koch brothers have as much
Tax bracket.
money as Soros.
So if they do, but we just don't have the, I don't know if it's the activist blood that we need to have on our side.
What the fuck are you talking about? The Koch brothers have been manipulating the electorate for decades.
To combat this, because this guy uses his money very effectively.
Yeah. I mean, you can't compete. Excuse me. Are you guys going to order anything? Because we do have people waiting for a 2-top, and you're sitting at a 4-top, and we could move you to another table if you still need time deciding.
On their side. We don't have that on our side. I mean,
you have like dozens of these assholes.
Recently, Elon Musk, trying to buy Twitter and all of that. But,
and all that.
Elon, you need to be the Soros that we need on our side.
Well, with Elon Musk, I think his red pilling is not complete. And what I mean by
he's not all in,
that is that he tries to portray himself as a moderate who's just sort of now slightly right of center in the landscape that's been caused by the...
Yeah, you can't trust that. I mean, you're right to be suspicious. The only thing that will save you is a certain level of healthy paranoia, Dinesh.
Democrats shifting left. We need a little bit more of a warrior spirit against the left. Now,
fucko, your supporters attacked the fucking Capitol. Your problem is warrior spirit. What you need is statesman spirit. For fuck's sake.
I think Elon is on the right side of that. But what he isn't is he isn't a militant in the way that Soros is.
Yeah.
And you need to counter these guys like...
Well, give him a couple years when he's really, really old.
Soros with a creative militancy on our side.
Mm-hmm.
So
exactly right. Because
yeah, totally. This is what we need. I love how they start off with this. The whole title of this thing is George Soros is trying to buy up Spanish radio stations. And for fuck's sake, they're like, we need one of these guys. Why can't we buy up these stations? You fucking did. Hold on. Mm-hmm. Here's a good example. Who killed KPOJ? Many see a right-wing conspiracy in the death of Portland's commercial progressive talk radio station, but Bain didn't act alone. Carl Wolfson's last show on KPOJ AM 620 sounded like victory. For the past 6 years, Wolfson, a former stand-up comedian, hosted a 3-hour morning drive time show that turned into a radio clubhouse for Portland liberals. Wolfson, laser fast with a quip and constantly in defense of Democrats, spent the weeks before the November 6th election boosting liberal candidates and puncturing Mitt Romney. No thanks. Romney has zero foreign policy experience, but he said the days following the election were celebratory. When he signed off in the air on November 9th, Wolfson was giddy with momentum. Then his Clear Channel boss walked into the KPOJ studio. Man, what great shows this week. Wolfson recalls Chris Sargent, operations manager for the station's under Clear Channel, but Sargent had an executioner's grimace. I looked at his face and I knew. Sargent then dropped the axe. Not just Wolfson, but on the only commercial left-wing political talk radio station in this overwhelmingly blue city. By 5:30 that evening, KPOJ, which many Portland liberals believed was their own megaphone, had become Fox Sports Radio 620, the city's third all-sports radio station. For the past 2 weeks, a wave of protests against the change has collected more than 15,000 signatures and grown to include the state's entire Democratic delegation in the U.S. Congress. An important voice, said Ron Wyden, has been silenced. Why else would Blue Portland, where voters went for Obama over Romney better than 3-1, be denied a progressive talk radio station? It's owned in part by Bain Capital, the very Romney-founded private equity firm that Wolfson had often skewered on the air. The changing face of Portland radio, a communications company at the mercy of casino capitalists and a sympathetic audience that, despite progressive talk's potential appeal, simply tuned in elsewhere. See, they just left you behind. You just weren't left enough. Of course, the shift, they already had 2 other sports stations. They needed a third because they people prefer that. They need more. They need to hear the game on 3 sources instead of 2.
We don't have the funds to be able to do that. I mean, we can put out movies here and there and try to influence the culture that way, and we have. But if we had Soros's money, Oh, you wouldn't.
I mean,
You'd never see you again.
well,
We
we've
would-
typically, by and large, been making movies. The 2,000 Mules was even less, but in the $5 million range, we'll then use another $5 million to market them. But this is not in the scale of what Soros is doing, which is putting in billions. Now, we have resources on our side, but many of them, even think of Fox News. They've got tremendous resources. If I were Fox, I'd hire 100 investigative reporters overnight, mobilize them to dig up all kinds of information
Yeah, whether it's there or
on
not.
the left, its leaders, look at their tax returns, look at what's going on in their ordinary
Yes, basically dox them. I would follow them around.
lives. Think of what we could do if we not only had the resources, which
You won't.
are available,
Yeah, they're not.
but if they were deployed effectively.
Yeah, they're not coming to you. I mean, this is like, is this the Dinesh D'Souza podcast pledge drive?
In that sense, we have to say that George Soros, although on the dark side, can be a sort of model for our side as well.
We wish.